This is The Christmas Dragon by Jeffrey Harris. Read by Jeffrey Harris. That's me. Long ago, when the ruins of today were full of life, lived a dragon on the highlands of Scotland. His name was Kriegel. He was a red dragon with beautiful crimson scales and dual spines that ran the length of his back and down his tail. Kriegel was primarily a goat eater, but he loved to travel to the East Coast for fish. It was there that the story begins. It was a small fishing village of Stonehaven. He had been fishing there since the days of King Donald II. The king lived there in Castle Dunnottar. He still felt bad that he wasn't there to defend the king when the Vikings attacked, but that was many years ago. Now it was 1564, in mid-October. The chill was in the air, letting everyone know that winter would soon be there. Kriegel laid on the ridge over the bay north of town. He blended in perfectly with the fall colors and the trees behind him. His attention was on the waves. He could smell fish. He knew they were out there. But he was waiting to catch the scent of the cod. After a long flight, he wasn't about to rush into the water and eat just any old fish. He was waiting for the best. Kriegel lifted his four-horned head and caught the scent of a boy. His keen eyes caught him in an instant. It was a boy 10 or 12 years old. He was wearing a green shirt and tan trousers. The boy was carefully climbing down the south edge of the cliffs. Kriegel watched closely with a bit of concern for the boy's safety. The concern was not needed as the boy carefully descended down the cliff. He was just like a mountain goat. It took a good 30 minutes for the boy to make it all the way to the bottom, and about the time the boy reached the beach, Kriegel's nose twitched with alarm. Cod. In one smooth motion, which can only be appreciated if seen in person, he turned and launched himself into the air. The boy paused his descent in awe of the magnificent sight. The red wings popped open in full span as the dragon appeared to be falling off the cliff. Then, inches from the water, he shot forward out into the sea. He never gained any height at all. He flew right at the water's edge, right towards his prey. The boy watched the dragon as he pulled his wings in and dove into the North Sea. The boy's name was Craighaven. He had grown up in the village of Stonehaven. His father was a carpenter. He had heard about dragons his whole life and how they had visited the town, but this was the first time for him to see one in real life. He watched the empty ocean very closely, waiting for the dragon to resurface. When the dragon broke the surface, he was in full flight, as if the water was merely air. As expected, he had a large fish in his mouth. But along with that one in his mouth, the dragon was holding two, one in each claw. Wow! Craig even let out a gasp. How skilled a hunter he must be to grab 3 fish at once. He couldn't take his eyes off the magnificent creature as he flew back to his perch on the cliff. But in mid-flight, the dragon swallowed the first fish, shot fire on the one in his left claw, and he gobbled that one down while it was still smoking. With grace like an eagle, the dragon swooped down at the cliff's edge, landed as gently as a mother's touch. Despite the ease of his landing, a few rocks broke free from the cliff's edge. As soft as his landing might have been, the dragon still weighed about 3,000 pounds. At nearly 30 feet long, even a lean dragon will carry a massive amount of weight. Just as Kriegel had put the third fish in his mouth, the ground gave way beneath him, and for the first time in hundreds of years of flying and landing, he was falling to the earth, completely out of his control. He hit the beach with a sound that the whole village must have heard. And yes, the greatest of all beasts was now upside down and buried in the sand. And all the dirt that had fallen off the cliff, and a little bit of rock. Keegan was stunned, to say the least. He wasn't hurt, but the weight of the cliff and the dirt did make it feel uncomfortable. He was going to just lay there for a few minutes, catch his breath, and try to figure out what was going on. His giving up was more from the shock and the embarrassment than any pain. Craig even yelled, "No!" as he took off and rushed towards the downed dragon. He didn't hesitate, as the need for help drove him into action. Kegel felt the presence of the boy as he approached. Craig even circled the dragon to assess the situation. The dragon's tail was clear of all the debris and wiggling in the shallow water of the bay. He took this as a good sign. His back probably wasn't broken. His left wing was under his body, while the right wing was under a ton of dirt. Craig even could only see the claws of his wings sticking out of the dirt. When he got around to Kegel's head, he slowed. Kegel's eyes opened to see the panicked face of the boy staring back at him. "A funny thing happened on the way to the cliff," Kegel said with a humorous tone. But to Craig even, it sounded like he was about to eat him, and he jumped back. "I will get you out of this," the boy promised, though he didn't know how. But he couldn't leave him like this. "Ha, ha, ha. I'm fine, young man. Just a tumble," the dragon assured him. "Let me catch my breath." Without another word, Craig even began to dig. His little hands pulled dirt off the giant wings. The progress was slow. It was going to take him hours. But Kegel just let him dig. "Thank you, sir. I can feel the difference already. What's your name?" "Craig even, my lord." His face lit up with pride, and he dug with even more vigor. "Craig even. Interesting name. I appreciate your efforts, but at this rate, it will take the rest of the day. Maybe I can help," Kegel said as he began to wiggle his tail. "Come over to this side and dig near my neck." This instruction wasn't because he needed help on that side, but he didn't want to hurt him when he lifted up out of the dirt. He was trying to make sure that the boy was well out of harm's way, and it also gave him a reason to help the boy feel like he was actually helping. With the boys out of harm's way, he slowly moved his tail a little bit more, back and forth movements, causing the dirt to fall away. Craig even dug around his neck. "That's it, Craig even. I can move my neck now." Being careful not to move too fast, Kegel worked his way out of the dirt. "Thank you, Sir Craig even. You must be a knight to show such courage." The dragon said this, finally standing up, freeing his wings in the process. Bowing to the dragon, Craig even said, "I am just a villager. I'm no hero." "It is my pleasure to meet such an amazing young man. Well, what brought you out today?" Craig even stepped back so he could see the dragon's eyes. "Well, Mr. Dragon, this is my favorite cove, and I was supposed to come down here with some friends, but they couldn't make it today, so I decided to just come by myself and pick up seashells. What about you? I haven't seen you here before." "I've been coming here for years fishing. Why, more years than I can even count. But it's been a few years since I've been back, and probably since you were a baby. I try not to disturb the villagers, so I swoop in low and try to stay to the north and not to cause too much of a panic, you see." "It didn't go very well, Mr. Dragon. I have heard lots of tales. Some of the villagers don't even go out at night. They're convinced that you feed at night. They don't want to be eaten," Craig said with a grin. He always thought this was silly, and now that he's met a dragon for himself, he knew they were wrong. Sure, a midnight snack every now and then like anyone else, but I eat the same thing the humans do. And I eat breakfast, lunch, and supper.
Oh, we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're too poor for supper.
The dragon looked confused. I don't think there's a difference between supper and dinner. I usually eat the same thing for all 3 meals anyway.
Oh, they're very different. Suppers, have candlelight and fancy napkins.
Well, I don't have napkins at all, so I better start calling it dinner, I guess.
Kegel's laugh was infectious, and it made both of them laugh, and the sand rumbled under their low tones. You keep laughing like that, I'm afraid the whole cliff is going to crumble down from the vibrations. Kegel shook off the last of the dirt. He took a couple steps into the water and dove in to clean himself off. The splash he made completely drenched Craighaven. At least his front side. Unlike the dragon, the cold water had a very uncomfortable effect on him. He pulled his shirt away from his body, trying to keep the cold water off his skin. Then he started to huddle into a ball, like a rock on the sand, and started rocking back and forth, trying to warm himself back up.
Well, what's the matter with you? He asked the shivering boy as he approached.
I got a little wet when you dove in.
I am so sorry. Here, let me help you.
Craighaven could tell by the dragon's posture that this wasn't going to be good. Please don't scorch me, Mr. Kriegel. I'll be okay. I just need to head home and get some dry clothes. Kegel didn't listen. He backed up a few meters and lowered his head to the boy's height.
Now put your hands over your face to protect your eyes. I'll be sure not to burn your skin.
With a grumbling noise, he filled his chest and lungs with fresh air. Then, as gentle as a summer breeze, he blew. The warm air wasn't hot as Craighaven had expected. It was warm like the hearth on a winter day. The warmth worked its way down to his bones. His whole body felt like it was joy flooding over him. What a feeling! Why, it almost felt like Christmas. This makes me wish I had some chestnuts. Kegel stopped blowing at this and had to ask.
Chestnuts?
Never mind, Craighaven said with a smile. He lowered his hands and thanked the dragon. I feel wonderful now. You need to stay with us all winter. You'll keep us warm every day.
Yeah, as nice as that sounds, I doubt you have room for a dragon, especially in your home.
I suppose not.
If you'd like, I could give you a ride home.
A ride home? As in you fly and I hang on?
Exactly.
That would be amazing. With no hesitation, Craighaven climbed on the dragon's forelimb and scampered up onto his neck. He was as sure-footed as he had been when he was climbing down the cliff. He had no trouble as Kegel took flight. As graceful as a dove, well, a dove twice the size of an elephant, they flew. And they flew all around the town, letting the boy take in the sights of his home from far above. They even made 2 passes of Castle Dunotter.
Who's the king these days? Who lives in the castle?
It's the Earl Marischal. There's no king that lives there anymore, but Mary Queen of Scots has visited more than once. He told about the Earl and the village, and all the buildings that he saw, from above this time. But as they came into view, he had thoughts about the amazing things that was happening in his little town. And after the 3rd pass, Craighaven pointed out the carpenter shop. I live there, above the carpenter shop. The dragon had to land up the street in the cross-section. This gave much more room to land, and he was careful not to hit any of the buildings with his wings. Once he was on the ground, he walked forward to Craighaven's home. His parents came out to greet him. His mother screamed in fear. Let him go!
there would have been a bigger crowd. Well, the entire town had watched the dragon circling. They all knew he was up there. But now they hid behind shutters and closed doors. The excitement of seeing the dragon was overshadowed by the fear of being eaten. Although there had never been any positive cases of people being eaten by a dragon, that didn't keep the fear from holding them back. So they remained hidden. "Mom, it's okay. He gave me a ride to get home safe. I helped him, and now he's helping me. We're friends," Craig even said as he slid down the dragon's back to the ground. "It is true. Your son rescued me. My name is Kegel. I am pleased to meet you." "So your idea of safe is to take my boy into the air 1,000 meters so he could fall to his death?" "Now, hon, let's hear him out," Craig Even's dad said. He was relaxing a little bit now that he knew his son was home safe. "I will hear nothing. Craig Even, or you get your tail inside." His mother was still being a mother, while his dad was fascinated with his new visitor. Pushing his wife towards the house, he addressed the dragon. "I am Doug Even Orr. I am his father. Thank you for bringing him home. I assume he was down by the sea again." "That is where we met, yes. I found myself in a spot of trouble, and Mr. Craig Even threw caution to the wind and rescued me. He is a hero." A few doors cracked a bit, and a few more shutters opened. The villagers risked their lives as curiosity won out over the fear. While doors were closed, they still heard what the dragon had said. Whispers began to leak out from the surrounding homes. "Hero? Craig Even? Saved a dragon? Hero? The boy?" Kegel smiled even bigger when he heard the whispering. His dragon ears allowed him to hear every word that was leaking out around the village. "Because of his kindness, I gave him a ride home." "Can I get you tea or anything?" "No, thank you. I just had dinner." "Dad, he was amazing. He dove into the water like a javelin and came up with 3 huge fish," Craig even told his parents excitedly. "Oh, any dragon could do the same," Kegel said humbly. Craig Even's mother was still not warming up to the dragon, but his father was loving the encounter. I remember your visit 10 years ago, and you were perched on the castle wall." "I'd come looking for the king, but there wasn't one." "Yep, no kings, just the Earl, but Queen Mary, she had been here before, but she lives in Edinburgh now." "I will have to pay her a visit. Edinburgh is beautiful this time of year. I have a cousin that lives near there. I must go say hi." After a little more small talk, the dragon said his goodbyes and took off into the air, flying home. Part 2. Winter set in and the weather was worse than it had been in decades. Kegel was in his cave on Ben Macdui, a mountain in the highlands. He had been watching the snowstorm rage for weeks. His mind was on the village of Stonehaven. He couldn't help but wonder how his friend was doing. With the last few weeks, the food supply had to be running low. There was no way for the fishing boats to get out and catch fish either. The storm was just too bad. He didn't realize the day was December 24th. Maybe it was the snow. Maybe it was the Christmas spirit lofting through the air. But one thing was for sure. He had to get into that storm and help his friend. He couldn't stop thinking about how the boy had raced across that dangerous beach, ignoring the fact there was a giant beast in front of him, but he only focused on the need of the fallen. And that fallen would soon become a friend. Kegel couldn't let this young man out-valiant him, if that's even a word. First, a plan. It needed to be epic. He started to make a mental list. Food. He would need some food, that's for sure. A basket. Yes, needed some way to carry the food. But where am I going to get that much food? Kegel asked himself. After some thought, he knew it had to be somewhere south of the storm, somewhere where the winter storm wasn't raging as much. There it is. Edinburgh. It was time to see the Queen. Kegel waded through the snow to get into an open area so he could take off. He leaped into the wind and spread his wings. The strong winter wind instantly pushed him to the left. It looked as if he was going to be driven into the mountain. But with one forceful stroke of his wings, he was facing the right direction. With a second stroke of his wings, he was moving forward. The storm was bad, but the dragon was badder. Worse? Mightier. Dragon was much mightier. Is that right? Edinburgh was a very long flight, but once he got south of Perth, the weather kind of let up. This was encouraging. It was just as he had hoped. Edinburgh wasn't suffering. This would make getting aid much more likely. The remaining flight was much more enjoyable. He was able to enjoy the beautiful Scottish countryside. He purposely flew by Blackness Castle, right on the River Forth. It was a special castle because Sir George Crichton, a High Admiral of Scotland, had talked to him about the construction 100 years ago. So in a way, he felt like he had helped build the castle. He didn't actually do much other than just converse, but he was able to tell him about the importance of the battlements and give him some tips that Sir George actually took. Originally, it was built to defend against the feuding Douglases. Lately, it was under the care of Alexander Stewart. It was also used as a prison, but Kegel didn't have time to stop this trip. He did, however, circle the central tower twice and blew some flames into the sky as a greeting before turning east towards Edinburgh. Before he knew it, the castle was in view, the magnificent stone fortress on a hill. The town had grown quite a bit. It's actually a city now, surrounding the castle on all sides. Kegel circled the castle twice, making sure the guards had seen him. He didn't want to startle the guards, after all. It also gave the people below time to move out of the way as he was coming in for a landing. He didn't want to squash anybody. Because he was no stranger to the castle, he was welcomed with salutes. These salutes came from the castle guards. They held their spears with both hands, pointing them into the sky, just above the dragon. They were careful not to point them directly at the dragon. The captain of the guard lowered his spear and approached the magnificent creature. "My lord, welcome to Edinburgh Castle. I am Captain John Irwin of the clan Irwin. How may I assist you this day?" "I am Kegel. I have come to request assistance from the Queen. Is she in?" "Yes, she is, and I have sent word to her that she has an honored visitor. May I ask you, what is the nature of this request?" "There is a great blizzard north of here in Stonehaven. The people there need my help, and I need your help to help them. They need food, and I'm hoping you have the supplies I need that I can take to them so they can be rescued from this terrible storm. All I need is the supplies. After all, even your best men couldn't get there through this storm, no offense." "We are very well aware of this storm. We have lost 2 men scouting the storm." John was cut off from saying any more by the governor's servant. "He will see you now." They walked together to the governor's house. The governor was standing in the doorway waiting for them. "It is a pleasure to meet you. The Queen is down the road at Holyrood Palace, of course. It is the Queen's residence. One of my men has already headed that way on horseback to let them know that you are here. I'm quite certain that the personal guards have already spotted you and have told her of your presence, but we thought it would be only best to send our own men so that we can give her proper warning."
I knew I heard galloping, and it sounded like palace horses. If she is expecting me, I shouldn't keep her waiting. After all, she is the Queen.
"By your leave, Lord Kegel." With that, Kegel took flight. It was 1 mile to the Queen's palace. Kegel landed easily in the courtyard. The Queen almost immediately joined him. "My lord, to what do I owe this honor?" the Queen said with a nod and a bow.
My Queen, Mary Queen of Scots, I have been told. It is an honor to meet you finally. I would love to sit and chat, but time is of the essence.
Kegel greeted her with a nod of his own head.
I need assistance for the village of Stonehaven. Donater Castle needs your help. The blizzard has them short of food, and if I may ask, could you provide some food for them? I will take it there myself.
"I do love Stonehaven. I love to visit there in the summertime. Lord Kegel, I will provide everything you need. On one caveat," the Queen said with a twinkle in her eye.
Yes, anything to help my friends.
"Oh, it's nothing terrible. Return here when it warms up and have tea with me in my court."
Kegel smiled and said, "With pleasure, my Queen."
The Queen signaled her servants and her quartermaster, giving them instructions to help the dragon. Mary's servants did as she instructed and gathered 4 large baskets of food. Everything Kegel had asked for was appearing right before his eyes. He was impressed by the efficiency of her staff. In less than 20 minutes, he was in the air, saying goodbyes, and heading north. Even for a dragon his size, the load was quite a struggle. The flight would be hard enough with no packages. He questioned his own ability to fly north. But the brave act of Craighaven kept running through his mind, so he pressed on. The edge of the blizzard was like a white wall. Kegel lowered his head and gripped the baskets tighter. He narrowed his eyes as he broke through that snow wall. The winds pushed hard against his body. Each mile felt like 5. On and on he flew. He caught an updraft crossing the River Tay and had to settle down near Dundee. The wind caused a rough landing, of course, and the baskets fell over. He lost some of the apples and a bit of the grain. He scrambled to gather up the lost items. The blizzard had everyone inside, so gathering the items was all on his own. He had no one there to help. His claws were amazing for fighting and tearing flesh, but not so much for picking up grains of wheat. But he got as much as he could and left a small pile, probably for the rats. The wind was worse ahead. He knew as he got closer to Stonehaven that it was going to be that way, and it was going to become much more difficult. But he continued on, more determined than ever. He sat down in Brecon for just a couple minutes, just enough to catch his breath. This landing was much more controlled. After the short break, he began to walk instead of just taking off like he had before. He knew it would add to his travel time, but he wanted to have overall success, not just impressive takeoffs and landings.
He put the baskets on his back this time and wedged them between his spines. An act he should have done originally, but at the time he was thinking that it was safer in his claws. Facing the storm for real had changed his mind and his thinking on this matter. With his 4 limbs, plus his wing talons, he made good ground. Lowering his head and widening his stance, his entire body was much closer to the ground. Closer than you would have thought a dragon could possibly get to the ground. This posture took a good part of the wind's sting out, and he began to make even more progress than he had thought he would. Crawling like a reptile, he started to move faster and faster, even faster than the royal horses. A smile formed across the dragon's face. His pride had him flying, but this more humble position was much more effective. He asked himself how he could have been so stupid. With a grunt, he increased his speed. The smile didn't leave his face, though. Not until he reached Bearvie River. He took flight to get over it, of course. By this time, his momentum was such that he stayed in flight all the way to Dunotter Castle. It was nearly getting dark when Kegel approached the castle, and he approached it on foot, or feet, I guess. He saw no one, which is what he expected. The storm was still raging. He guessed that the villagers were huddled inside, and most likely all together in the castle walls. The wind blew as an angry badger. It was relentless. Kegel blew a blast of fire towards the castle with a roaring sound. "That should let him know I'm here," Kegel said to himself. He jumped up on the outer walls, followed by an easy hop down to the courtyard. The doors to the inner court were barely visible through the snowdrift. The 7-foot snowdrift was no match for the dragon. He torched it to a puddle in just a minute. The Earl's guards were standing guard next to the door, and they could feel the heat from the dragon coming through the door. "Earl! Earl! The dragon is melting the snow!" one of the guards yelled excitedly. They both turned towards the door. Kegel knocked on the door with his tail and called, "Hello in there. I'm looking for Stonehaven." He paused slightly and said, "I brought food." Part 3. "I knew he would come," Stonehaven said with glee. "And it's Christmas Eve. Why, he's a Christmas dragon. I bet he has gifts." "Quick, someone open the door," the Earl called out. Of course, there was no way for the dragon to actually come inside. Kegel suggested opening a window to reduce the amount of cold air that would enter into the castle. Yes, of course." The Earl redirected them to open the shutters on the window just left of the main doors. The Earl was the first to get to the window to, of course, greet the dragon. "Sir Dragon, why have you come? I mean, it is an honor to meet you." "His name is Kegel," Stonehaven called out as he was trying to make his way through the villagers. Despite the crowd, the Earl did hear him and greeted the great beast with a new vigor. "Mr. Kegel, welcome to Dunotter Castle. What can we help you with?" "Oh, but it is I that have come to help you," Kegel replied, followed by, "Who's hungry?" Before the Earl could even respond, several of the villagers cried out, "We are! We are!" Yes, we could definitely use some food," the Earl said, losing his royal composure. The wind was still blowing hard, and Kegel could tell that the cold air was affecting the people inside. They were starting to shiver and back away from the window's view.
Before you close the window, stand back. Let me share some of my heat, and when I am done, close the window quickly. Then I will lay out the baskets of food for you and the villagers in front of the large door.
Kegel, Kegel, it's me, Craigiven. Do you remember me?
He finally made his way to the window before they had closed it. He wasn't sure if his face was hurting because of the cold or because of the huge smile that was about to split his face in half. Craigiven, there you are. How are you doing, my young friend?
I am better now. Thank you for coming. How did you know we needed help?
It was just a hunch. With this big storm, I knew you would need some help. Some kind of help, anyway. I couldn't just lay there in my warm cave thinking about you being in danger and not help.
But really? But why me?
You showed me a kindness and showed me what bravery really was. You came rushing to my aid. I knew I would have to travel through the snow to help you. I couldn't be outdone by a kid now, could I?
I don't know about that, Craigiven said.
Well, if you were an all-powerful dragon, wouldn't you help?
You had me there. I guess I would help.
The crowd was amazed at the casual conversation the two were having. How could this boy be talking to a dragon directly? Shouldn't the Earl be handling this? Stop talking and get the food in here, and shut the windows. They weren't real happy about the whole thing. Kegel heard their moaning, though, with those great ears of his. He told Craigiven to back up. Once he was out of the way, Kegel blew the hot air into the castle. Soon smiles were all around as the villagers warmed up quickly. They still wanted the food, but now they weren't as grumpy as they were, and the warmth was really making everyone cheery. They weren't as quick to end the conversation now that they were warmed up again. The guards didn't close the windows as they were instructed. Craigiven stepped back up to the window.
Thank you, Kegel. You just may have saved our village.
You are as amazing as you appear, Craigiven praised him. Ah, but it is you that are the true hero. It was you that warmed my heart, the heart of a dragon, and gave me a desire to take action. If the Earl was smart, he would name the cove where we met after you. Craigiven Bay. I like the sound of that. Now, go to the doors. We have hungry people inside. They must eat. He gave another quick blast of air into the window. Now close it. The guards did it this time. Kegel moved back to the door and set up all the baskets to allow them easier access. Once the doors opened, he helped them by pushing them inside the castle. He encouraged them to close the door. Before they did, the Earl came to the door and addressed him. Are you sure there is nothing that we can do for you, Sir Dragon? Don't worry about me. I'll be heading back to my cave. I will be just fine. Once again, Craigiven broke through the crowd and ran outside. He gave the dragon a big hug around his leg. Kegel lowered his head and touched his head to Craigiven's. Go now, little one. I will return in the spring, and we will have much more time to spend together.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Kegel raised his head and spoke to the Earl. I'm going to go gather some fish for you as well, and I will drop them out here in front of the doors. The snow will keep them safe for you to eat in days to come. Now close the doors and be well. I will let out a roar when I am finished before I head home. Kegel swiftly flew and dove into the North Sea. He came up dive after dive with at least 3 fish and dropped them all off at the castle just as he had said. The water actually felt good. It was much warmer than the winter air. So the fishing made him feel better. Soon he had well over 50 fish, so he thought that would be enough for a few days. He let out a mighty roar and signaled the people inside that he has finished, and that he was leaving. Kegel turned to take off and said, "Goodbye, Stonehaven. Peace to you, and to you a good night." The villagers called back to him, "Thank you, Kegel. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas!" And it went on and on and on till the dragon was well out of sight. Epilogue. The storm let up in 3 or 4 days, and the temperatures returned to normal. The snow kept them inside the castle for a few more days after that. When they finally emerged, the villagers were still talking about the miracle that Craighaven and the Christmas dragon had brought to them. It was the worst and best Christmas they had ever had. "Do you think he'll come back next Christmas? And every Christmas?" they all asked Craighaven. You need to invite him." I will definitely do that," Craighaven said. And to this day, the bay that Craighaven met, Kegel, is known as Craighaven Bay. You can look it up. It's in Google Earth, Google Maps, and all the rest of them. Check it out. You can also look up information on all the castles that I mentioned. They're all out there. Thank you for listening. This is the end. This was dedicated to all those of you out there that believe in dragons and love Scotland. And for all those of you who think that dragons can't be Christmassy, hopefully I changed your mind. This was a production from Schmangy Productions, a division of Parted Water Ministries. If you'd like more information on the books that Jeff has written, visit his website at www.partedwaters.net. Check it out. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.